She didn't just throw away a homeless girl's food. She filmed it, laughed, and posted it to millions like it was a joke. What she didn't know is that the crazy homeless guy sitting next to that child wasn't crazy at all. He was the most feared hitman in the Western Hemisphere. And that video just brought the ghost out of retirement. The November rain in Chicago felt like ice needles against 7-year-old Isabella's face as she huddled under the awning of a closed boutique on Michigan Avenue. Her small fingers, stiff with cold, carefully cradled the warm styrofoam container she'd just received from the kind woman at the food truck. Steam rose from the chicken soup inside, and the smell alone made her empty stomach cramp with anticipation. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her uncle Miguel sat beside her on the cold concrete, his weathered face hidden beneath a worn baseball cap, his eyes constantly scanning the street with a vigilance that most would attribute to paranoia. But Isabella knew better. Uncle Miguel was always watching, always protecting, even though the world saw him as just another homeless veteran who'd lost his way. "Eat slowly, mija," Miguel said in Spanish, his voice gravelly from years of cigarettes and harder things he'd left behind. "Small bites. Your stomach needs to adjust." Isabella nodded, her tangled dark hair falling across her face as she opened the container with trembling hands. The soup was perfect. Chunks of real chicken, soft noodles, vegetables she couldn't name, but that smelled like heaven. She lifted the plastic spoon, ready for that first precious bite. That's when she appeared. Madison Brooks was everything Isabella would never be. 23 years old, blonde hair so perfect it looked like spun gold, designer clothes that probably cost more than most people's rent, and a smile that never quite reached her cold blue eyes. She moved through the world with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no, someone who'd been raised to believe that her comfort mattered more than other people's survival. Madison was flanked by her usual crew, 3 other influencers who look like variations of the same person, all recording everything on their phones for their combined 10 million TikTok followers. They'd been bar hopping in River North, documenting every moment of their epic girls' night. And Madison was desperate for content that would go viral. She spotted Isabella first. "Oh my God," Madison said, loud enough for her phone's microphone to pick up clearly. "Look at this. This is literally why this city is going to shit." Her friends giggled nervously, unsure where this was going, but trained to support whatever Madison did. After all, she was the one with 3.8 million followers. She was the one brand deals called first. She was their ticket to influencer fame. Madison strutted over to where Isabella sat, her Louboutin heels clicking against the wet pavement like a countdown to disaster. Isabella instinctively pulled the soup container closer to her chest, recognizing the predatory look in the older woman's eyes. She'd seen it before, in social workers who pretended to care, in police officers who moved them along, in people who looked at her like she was less than human. "Are you seriously eating on the street?" Madison said, making sure she was perfectly framed in her phone's camera. "Like, this is a shopping district, not a homeless shelter." Miguel's hand found Isabella's shoulder, squeezing gently, their signal for, "Stay quiet, stay still." He'd learned long ago that invisibility was their best defense. Drawing attention, any attention, only led to trouble. But Madison wasn't interested in Miguel. Her focus was entirely on the little girl with the soup, seeing not a hungry child, but an opportunity for content. "You know what?" Madison said, her voice dripping with false concern. "This is actually dangerous. A child shouldn't be eating random food on the street. That's probably not even safe." Before Isabella could react, before Miguel could intervene, Madison reached down and snatched the styrofoam container from the little girl's hands. The movement was so fast, so unexpected, that Isabella couldn't even cry out. She just sat there, frozen, watching the steam rise from her stolen meal. "This is for your own good," Madison announced to her camera. Then, with a theatrical gesture that would later be viewed 57 million times, she walked 3 steps to the nearest trash can and threw the soup away. The container hit the bottom with a wet thud that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. "There," Madison said, turning back to her camera with a satisfied smile. "I just saved a child from food poisoning. You're welcome, Chicago." Her friends laughed, that hollow, practiced laugh of people who'd long ago traded their conscience for proximity to fame. One of them, a brunette named Chloe, even started a slow clap that the others quickly joined. Isabella's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't make a sound. She'd learned that crying only made things worse, only gave people like Madison more ammunition. Instead, she pressed her face against Miguel's shoulder, her small body shaking with silent sobs. Miguel's entire body had gone rigid. His hand, which had been gentle on Isabella's shoulder, now gripped her protectively, possessively. But he didn't move, didn't speak. Years of survival had taught him that reaction led to recognition, and recognition was something he could never afford. "Ah, don't cry," Madison cooed mockingly at Isabella. "I'll call CPS for you. They'll get you some real food. And maybe a real home instead of—" She gestured vaguely at Miguel. "Whatever this situation is." That's when Miguel looked up, and for just a moment, Madison found herself staring into eyes that belonged in a nightmare. They weren't the roomy, unfocused eyes of a homeless drunk. They were sharp, calculating, and cold as a winter grave. They were the eyes of someone who'd killed 37 people across 3 continents and never lost a night's sleep. They were the eyes of El Fantasma, the ghost, though Madison Brooks would never know that. Not yet. The moment passed so quickly Madison wasn't even sure it had happened. Miguel lowered his gaze, pulled Isabella closer, and seemed to shrink back into himself. Just another invisible person in a city full of them. "Come on, girls," Madison said, already editing the video on her phone as she walked. "This is going to break the internet." She was right about that, though not in the way she expected. As Madison and her crew disappeared into an Uber, laughing about their civic duty, Isabella finally allowed herself to cry properly. Great, gasping sobs that shook her tiny frame as the rain continued to fall, washing away any trace of the warmth the soup had promised. "I'm so hungry, Tio," she whispered in Spanish. "I'm so hungry." Miguel held his niece, the only family he had left, the only pure thing in his catastrophically damaged life, and felt something shift inside him. He'd spent 3 years in hiding, 3 years pretending to be nobody, 3 years keeping Isabella safe by being invisible. But Madison Brooks had just made a critical error. She'd hurt the only person in the world Miguel would kill for, or more accurately, the only person he would come out of retirement for. "It's okay, mija," he whispered, his voice carrying a promise that would soon reshape Madison's entire world. "Everything's going to be okay." He pulled out a phone that no one would expect a homeless man to have, encrypted, untraceable, connected to networks that operated in the shadows of society. With practiced efficiency, he typed a single message to a number he hadn't contacted in 3 years. "I need you to find someone for me, Madison Brooks, influencer, Chicago." The response came within seconds. "El Fantasma? Is this really you?" "Yes. Thought you were dead." "I was. Now I'm not." There was a pause. Then, "Whatever you need, brother. Welcome back." Miguel put the phone away and kissed the top of Isabella's head. In the distance, police sirens wailed through the Chicago night, but for once, they had nothing to do with him. Not yet. Madison's video went live at 11:47 p.m. By midnight, it had 100,000 views. By 1 a.m., it had broken 1 million. The comments were pouring in, a mix of support and outrage that Madison thrived on. Controversy meant engagement, and engagement meant money. She fell asleep in her Lincoln Park penthouse apartment, a gift from her father, a hedge fund manager who'd bought her way out of every consequence she'd ever faced, completely unaware that she'd just signed her own social death warrant. Because Miguel Hernandez wasn't really a homeless veteran, he was something far more dangerous. A ghost story that criminals told each other, a legend that law enforcement agencies refused to acknowledge publicly, a man who disappeared so completely that most assumed he was dead. El Fantasma had been the most feared sicario in the Western Hemisphere, a surgical killer who worked for whoever paid best but followed his own code. He never killed children, he never killed innocents, and he never, ever, let anyone hurt his family. 3 years ago, he'd walked away from that life when his sister died, leaving behind a 7-year-old daughter with no one else to protect her. He'd burned his old identity, destroyed his connections, and vanished into the streets of Chicago with Isabella, choosing poverty and invisibility over wealth and danger. But Madison Brooks had just done something unforgivable. She'd made Isabella cry. She'd taken food from a hungry child and turned it into content. She'd weaponized cruelty for clicks. And now El Fantasma was going to teach her what real consequences looked like. The abandoned warehouse on the south side of Chicago looked like nothing special from the outside. Broken windows, graffiti-covered walls, the kind of place even the homeless avoided after dark. But beneath its derelict exterior lay something extraordinary. A fully operational safe house that had remained untouched for 3 years, waiting for its master to return. Miguel approached the hidden entrance at 3 a.m., Isabella sleeping in his arms, her small body weighing almost nothing. He pressed his thumb against what looked like a rust stain, but was actually a biometric scanner. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft hiss, a section of the wall swung inward. The contrast was jarring. Outside, urban decay. Inside, military-grade security, climate control, and technology that most government agencies couldn't afford. This had been one of 7 safe houses Miguel maintained during his active years, funded by jobs that paid in millions and asked no questions. He laid Isabella on a bed in the secure bedroom, covering her with blankets that had been vacuum-sealed for 3 years but still smelled fresh. She stirred slightly, mumbling something about soup, then settled back into exhausted sleep. Miguel stood in the main room, surrounded by ghosts of his former life, weapons locked in biometric safes, communication equipment that could tap into satellites, false identities so perfect that even he sometimes forgot which was real. He'd walked away from all of it for Isabella. But tonight, Madison Brooks had changed the rules. The computer system came online with a few keystrokes, connecting to networks that existed in the dark spaces between legal and illegal. Within minutes, he had everything about Madison Brooks displayed across multiple screens. Madison Ashley Brooks, 23 years old, trust fund baby turned influencer. 3.8 million TikTok followers, 2.1 million on Instagram, verified on all platforms. Estimated yearly income from sponsorships, $750,000. Family net worth, $47 million. But Miguel dug deeper into the spaces where even rich people's lawyers couldn't clean up. And what he found made his cold expression even colder. This wasn't the first time. There were dozens of videos over the past 2 years. Madison pranking minimum wage workers. Madison destroying a street vendor's cart because the tacos looked dirty. Madison getting a barista fired for spelling her name wrong. Always filming. Always laughing. Always profiting from other people's misery. The comments sections were battlegrounds. Half the viewers loved her savage energy. The other half called her a monster. But the algorithm didn't care about morality. It cared about engagement. And Madison Brooks generated engagement like a factory. Miguel pulled up her latest video, the one with Isabella. It had been live for 4 hours and already had 8 million views. He forced himself to watch it again, to see his niece's face crumble as her food was thrown away, to hear Madison's cruel laughter, to read the comments that ranged from "Yes, Queen" to death threats that meant nothing because they came from powerless people. But Miguel wasn't powerless. He was something Madison's money couldn't protect her from. He was consequence incarnate. His phone buzzed. A secure message from someone labeled only as V. "Heard you're back in the game." Miguel typed, "Not the game. This is personal." "The Madison Brooks thing? It's all over the internet." "You saw?" "Everyone saw." "That's your niece?" "Yes." A pause. Then, "What do you need?" This was the network Madison would never understand, could never buy her way into. Professional killers, hackers, arms dealers, information brokers, people who operated outside society's rules but followed their own strict codes. And one of those codes was simple. "You don't hurt children." "Information," Miguel typed. "Everything. Financial, personal, digital, every skeleton, every secret, every weakness. Give me 12 hours. You have 6. Done." Miguel closed the connection and walked to the window. Chicago sprawled before him, a city of lights and shadows where Madison Brooks thought she was untouchable. She was about to learn otherwise, but he wouldn't kill her. Death was too easy, too quick, too merciful. Madison Brooks loved attention, craved fame, built her entire identity on public validation. So that's exactly what Miguel would take from her. Piece by piece, post by post, follower by follower. He would destroy Madison Brooks in the only way that would truly hurt her. Publicly, virally, and completely legally. The phone buzzed again. This time it was someone labeled D, a hacker who owed Miguel 3 favors from a job in Prague 5 years ago. "Saw the video. That your blood?" "My sister's daughter." "Jesus, want me to burn her digital world down?" "Not yet, but be ready." "Always am for you, ghost." By 5 a.m., Miguel had assembled something Madison's lawyers would later call a conspiracy, but was actually just professional courtesy among society's shadows. A federal prosecutor who'd once been saved by Miguel's intel and would ask no questions about anonymous tips. A journalist at the Tribune whose brother Miguel had protected from cartel violence. An IRS investigator who knew Miguel only as a voice, who'd once given her the evidence to take down a trafficking ring. They didn't know each other. They didn't know they were all connected by the Yihan ghost in the machine. But they were all about to receive information about Madison Brooks that would change everything. As dawn broke over Chicago, Isabella woke up in a real bed for the first time in 6 months. She padded out to find Miguel at the computers, his face illuminated by multiple screens showing Madison's social media empire. "Tio," she said sleepily, "where are we?" "Somewhere safe, mija." "Are we in trouble? Because of the lady?" Miguel turned to his niece, his expression softening in a way it only did for her. "No, baby, she's the one in trouble. She just doesn't know it yet." Isabella looked at the screen showing Madison's smiling face, her perfect life, her millions of followers. She's pretty, Isabella said simply. Pretty on the outside, Miguel agreed, but ugly where it counts. What are you going to do? Miguel pulled Isabella onto his lap, kissing the top of her head. I'm going to teach her a lesson about kindness, the kind of lesson she should have learned a long time ago. Are you going to hurt her? No, mija. I'm going to do something worse. What? I'm going to tell the truth about her. Isabella didn't understand, but she trusted her uncle. He'd kept her safe after Mama died, even when it meant sleeping in the cold, even when it meant being hungry, even when it meant being invisible. Meanwhile, Madison Brooks woke up in her king-sized bed, checked her phone, and squealed with delight. The homeless girl video had hit 12 million views. Brands were sliding into her DMs with new offers. Her follower count had jumped by 200,000 overnight. She posted a selfie with the caption, "Woke up to viral fame again. Stay mad, haters. You're just making me richer." She had no idea that her digital empire had already been infiltrated, that her financial records were being compiled, that her deleted videos were being recovered, that her private messages were being archived, that every cruel thing she'd ever done was about to come to light. The ghost was patient, the ghost was thorough, and the ghost had just begun. Madison's first indication that something was wrong came at her favorite coffee shop, Blue Bottle in Lincoln Park. It was 10 a.m. and she was meeting her manager, Derek, to discuss brand deals stemming from her viral video. 12 million views in 18 hours, Derek said, his spray-tanned face glowing with excitement. Fashion Nova wants to double your rate. Bang Energy is offering a 6-figure deal. And get this, a reality show producer called. They want to build a series around you. Madison sipped her oat milk latte, already mentally spending the money. I told you controversial content works. People are so sensitive these days. A little reality check and everyone loses their minds. The homeless advocate groups are organizing boycotts, Derek mentioned casually. But honestly, that just drives more engagement. You're untouchable, babe. That's when Madison's phone buzzed. A notification from her banking app. She glanced at it absently, then froze. What the fuck? What's wrong? Madison showed him her phone. Her checking account, which had held $47,000 that morning, now showed $312. That has to be a glitch, Derek said. Call the bank. But when Madison called, the representative was confused. According to our records, Ms. Brooks, you initiated a wire transfer at 9:47 a.m. to, let me see, the Chicago Coalition for Homeless Youth. I did what? $46,996.88 to the Chicago Coalition for Homeless Youth. The transaction was authenticated with your password and security questions. Madison's voice rose to a shriek. I didn't authorize that. That's my money. I understand your frustration, ma'am. However, the transaction appears legitimate. You'll need to file a dispute claim, which typically takes 7 to 10 business days to investigate. Madison hung up, her hands shaking. Someone stole my money. Someone hacked me and stole my fucking money. But that was just the beginning. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from the IRS. Dear Ms. Brooks, our records indicate significant discrepancies in your reported income for tax years 2021-2023. An audit has been initiated. Please retain all financial records and expect contact from our investigation department within 48 hours. This can't be happening, Madison whispered. Derek's phone rang. He answered, his face gradually paling. What do you mean the Fashion Nova deal is off? A video? What video? He hung up and immediately opened Twitter. There it was, trending at number 3. Madison exposed. Someone had compiled a supercut of every cruel thing Madison had ever done on camera. Not just the public videos, but deleted content. Instagram live recordings she thought were gone. Private Snapchats that had been screenshotted. 2 straight minutes of Madison Brooks being a monster, set to somber music, with statistics about homelessness and poverty scrolling across the bottom. The video had been posted simultaneously on every platform, from every major expose account, all crediting an anonymous source. In 2 hours, it had been viewed 23 million times. The comments were brutal. "I always knew she was fake, but this is next-level evil. How is she not arrested for harassment? Every brand working with her needs to drop her now. That poor little girl. I'm sobbin'." Madison's follower count, which had been climbing all morning, suddenly began to plummet. Not gradually, but in chunks, thousands at a time, like rats fleeing a sinking ship. "We need to do damage control," Derek said, but his voice lacked conviction. He'd managed influencers through scandals before, but nothing like this. Madison tried to post a response video, but her TikTok account was suspended for violating community guidelines. Her Instagram was flooded with so many reports that it was temporarily locked. Her Twitter became a battlefield of hate that made her afraid to even look. Then came the text that made her blood run cold. "Unknown number. This is just the beginning. Every cruel thing you've done is coming to light. Every person you've hurt will have justice. You took food from a hungry child. Now watch as everything you value is taken from you." Madison showed the text to Derek, who immediately said, "We need to call the police." But when they tried to trace the number, it didn't exist. When they tried to screenshot the message, it deleted itself. It was like being haunted by a ghost in the machine. That afternoon, things got worse. A reporter from the Chicago Tribune called. "Ms. Brooks, I'm investigating allegations that you've been involved in tax evasion through unreported sponsorship deals. Would you like to comment?" "That's insane! I report everything." "Our sources suggest otherwise. We have documents showing offshore accounts and hidden income streams. The article publishes tomorrow unless you'd like to provide your side of the story." Madison hung up in panic. Offshore accounts? She didn't have any offshore accounts. Did she? Her father handled some of her finances. Had he? She called her father, Richard Brooks, managing partner at Brooks, Steinberg and Associates, a man who'd never met a problem he couldn't buy his way out of. "Dad, something's happening. Someone's attacking me. They stole my money. They're spreading lies." "Madison, I need you to listen very carefully." Her father's voice was unusually serious. "I just got off the phone with my lawyer. Someone sent the FBI a package of information about our family's finances. Things that shouldn't be public." "What kind of things?" "The kind of things that could destroy us all. Whoever's doing this isn't some random internet troll. This is professional." Madison felt her world tilting. "Fix it. You always fix everything." "I'm trying, Princess. But whoever this is, they're good. Very good. Maybe you should apologize for that video. Make this go away." "Apologize? I didn't do anything wrong." But even as she said it, Madison knew that wasn't true. She'd done plenty wrong. She'd just never thought there would be consequences. That night, Madison couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that little girl's face, the way her eyes had filled with tears, the way she'd pressed against her uncle, the way she'd tried not to cry. For the first time in her privileged life, Madison Brooks felt something she'd never experienced before. Fear. Real, bone-deep fear of someone she couldn't buy, couldn't charm, couldn't influence. Someone who was systematically dismantling her life with the precision of a surgeon. Someone who was just getting started. In the warehouse safe house, Miguel worked through the night while Isabella slept peacefully in the next room. His screens showed Madison's empire crumbling in real time, followers fleeing, brands canceling contracts, media outlets picking up the story. But he wasn't satisfied. Not yet. The money he'd transferred from her account, her food money, as he thought of it, would feed hundreds of homeless children for months. The IRS audit was real. Turned out Madison had been evading taxes for years, just needed someone to point them in the right direction. The family financial crimes? Those were a bonus Miguel hadn't expected. But the Brooks family had more skeletons than a cemetery. His phone buzzed. V had sent another package of information. You're going to want to see this. Madison Brooks didn't just hurt your niece. There's a pattern. I found 7 other incidents, 3 involving children. One of them, a 5-year-old boy selling flowers, ended up in the hospital after she had him arrested for harassment. His family was deported 2 weeks later. Miguel's expression darkened further. This wasn't just about Isabella anymore. This was about a predator who used her privilege to hurt the most vulnerable members of society. Send me everything, he typed. Already did. Also, thought you should know, her father's hedge fund has ties to some very bad people, the kind of people you used to work for. Miguel smiled coldly. Richard Brooks had made his fortune laundering money for cartels, hidden behind shell companies and legal loopholes. He'd thought himself untouchable, protected by wealth and connections. But Miguel knew those cartels. He'd worked for them, killed for them, disappeared problems for them. And they had one rule Richard Brooks had forgotten. You never draw attention to the operation. Madison's viral cruelty had just put a spotlight on her entire family. One more thing, V messaged. The FBI agent assigned to the Brooks case? Alexandra Chen. Ring any bells? Miguel's smile widened. Alex Chen. He'd saved her partner's life in a shootout 5 years ago, though she'd never known who the anonymous caller was who'd warned them about the ambush. She was one of the few truly clean agents in Chicago, immune to bribes and political pressure. And now she had everything she needed to take down the Brooks empire. As dawn approached, Miguel finally allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Phase 1 was complete. Madison's digital life was in ruins, her finances were frozen, and her family was under federal investigation. But he wasn't done. Not even close. Because Madison Brooks had filmed herself throwing away Isabella's food, laughing as a child went hungry. And for that, she would lose everything she'd ever valued, one piece at a time, until she understood what it meant to have nothing, until she understood what it meant to be invisible, until she understood that some ghosts don't stay buried. Madison stood in her father's study at 7 a.m., watching him pace behind his mahogany desk like a caged animal. Richard Brooks, who'd navigated SEC investigations and hostile takeovers without breaking a sweat, looked genuinely terrified. The FBI froze our accounts, he said, his voice hollow. All of them. Business, personal, even your mother's charity. Foundation. They can't do that, Madison protested. We have rights. They can when they have evidence of money laundering, tax evasion, and RICO violations. Richard slumped in his chair. Someone sent them everything, Madison. Transactions I thought were buried, connections that were supposed to be invisible, documents that shouldn't exist. Madison's phone, which had been buzzing nonstop with notifications, suddenly went silent. She looked at it, confused. Every single one of her social media accounts had been banned, not suspended, permanently banned for severe and repeated violations of community guidelines. Her 3.8 million TikTok followers, gone. Her Instagram verification, gone. Her YouTube channel, gone. Her Twitter, gone. She was digitally erased. No, no, no. She frantically tried logging in, but every platform showed the same message. This account has been permanently disabled. Her phone rang. It was Chloe, one of her friends from the night of the incident. Madison, I'm sorry, but I can't be associated with you anymore. My sponsors are threatening to drop me just for being in your videos. I have to think about my brand. Chloe, wait. But she'd already hung up. Within the next hour, every single one of Madison's friends would send similar messages. In the influencer world, she'd become radioactive. Then came the knock on the door. FBI agent Alexandra Chen stood on the Brooks' doorstep with a warrant and a team of federal agents. She was 43 years old, sharp-eyed, and had built her career taking down people who thought they were untouchable. Richard Brooks, Madison Brooks, we have warrants to search these premises and seize all electronic devices. You have the right to remain silent. As agents flooded the house, boxing up computers, documents, and everything else, Madison watched her perfect life get packed into evidence bags. "This is about that stupid video, isn't it?" she said to Agent Chen. "Someone's doing this because I threw away some soup?" Chen looked at her with a mixture of disgust and pity. "No, Ms. Brooks. This is about years of criminal activity that just happened to come to light. Funny how one act of cruelty can unravel everything, isn't it?" As they were being led out to the FBI vehicles, photographers were already gathered. Someone had tipped off the media. The images of Madison Brooks being arrested, mascara running down her face, would be on every news site within minutes. But the worst was yet to come. That afternoon, while Madison sat in a federal holding cell, her lawyer delivered news that made everything else pale in comparison. "Your father's business partners want to speak with you." "His hedge fund partners?" The lawyer's face was grim. "His other partners. The ones from Mexico." Madison's blood went cold. She knew her father had connections, but she'd never asked questions, never wanted to know details. Now those connections were becoming a noose around her neck. "They're very unhappy about the attention you've brought to their operations. They've lost millions because of the FBI investigation. They want compensation." "How much?" "Everything. Every dollar your family has." Or, he didn't need to finish. Madison understood. She'd seen enough movies to know what cartels did to people who cost them money. Back in the safe house, Miguel received a call from someone he hadn't spoken to in 3 years. Joaquin Morelos, head of the Sinaloa cartel's Chicago operations. "Ghost." Joaquin's voice was warm, like greeting an old friend. "Heard you were back." "Not back. Just handling a personal matter. The Brooks girl. We know. Her father has been washing our money for years. Very quietly, very efficiently, until his daughter decided to become famous for being cruel. And now the FBI is crawling all over our operations. We've lost 3 warehouses, 7 distribution points. All because that stupid girl wanted to go viral." Miguel waited. "We're going to handle the father," Joaquin continued. "But the girl, we know she hurt your blood, your niece. So we're giving you the courtesy. She's yours to deal with." "I don't kill anymore, Joaquin." "Who said anything about killing? There are worse things than death, my friend. You of all people know that." After the call ended, Miguel sat in silence. The cartel's involvement changed things. Madison wasn't just facing legal troubles now. She was facing the kind of enemies that made federal prison look like a safe haven. He looked at Isabella, who was drawing with crayons he'd bought her, humming softly to herself. She'd been having nightmares about the woman who took her food, waking up crying about being hungry. Miguel made a decision. That evening, Madison was released on bail. $2 million that her father had to borrow from loan sharks because all their assets were frozen. She returned to find her apartment ransacked by the FBI, her designer clothes thrown everywhere, her precious possessions catalogued as evidence. Her phone, a replacement since the FBI had taken her original, buzzed with a video message from an unknown number. She opened it and gasped. It was her father, tied to a chair in what looked like a warehouse. Behind him stood men in masks, and one held a machete. "Madison!" Her father's voice was broken, defeated. "They want their money. All of it. You have 48 hours to make this right, or they're going to— Please, princess, please fix this." The video ended. Madison tried calling back, but the number was dead. She tried calling her father, straight to voicemail. Her mother wasn't answering either. She was completely alone. That's when her door buzzed. The intercom showed a man in a baseball cap and old clothes. He looked homeless, but something about his posture seemed familiar. "Delivery for Madison Brooks," the voice said. Madison, desperate for any human contact, buzzed him in. When she opened her apartment door, she found herself face with the homeless man from the video, the uncle of the little girl. But looking into his eyes now, she realized he was anything but homeless. Miguel entered her apartment with calm authority, his entire demeanor different from the cowering figure in her video. He moved like a predator, controlled and dangerous. "Who are you?" Madison whispered, backing away. "Someone you should have left alone," Miguel replied, his accent barely noticeable now. "Sit down. We need to talk about your father. You know where he is? I know the men who have him. Used to work with them, actually." Miguel settled into her expensive couch like he owned it. "They're very angry with you, Madison. You cost them about $50 million. Please." Madison fell to her knees, something she'd never done in her entitled life. "Please help him. I'll do anything." "Anything?" "Yes. I'll pay you. You don't have any money left. The FBI took it all." "Then what do you want?" Miguel pulled out his phone and showed her a picture of Isabella. "This is my niece, the child you took food from, the child you humiliated for entertainment." Madison's face paled as understanding dawned. "You did all this? The FBI? The social media? Everything?" "I provided information to interested parties. Your own crimes did the rest." Miguel leaned forward. "But now you have a choice. Your father has maybe 20 hours before the cartel loses patience. I can save him." "How?" "I tell them you're under my protection, that killing your father would be a personal insult to me. They'll listen because they know what I'm capable of when personally insulted. And in exchange, you're going to make amends. Real amends. Not some PR apology video, but actual change." Miguel pulled out a document. "You're going to sign over every remaining asset you have to a trust for homeless children in Chicago. You're going to spend the next 5 years working in homeless shelters. Real work, not photo ops. You're going to use whatever platform you can rebuild to advocate for the people you've spent your life stepping on. 5 years? My niece is 7. In 5 years, she'll be 12, old enough to understand forgiveness. If you've truly changed by then, if you've actually become a decent human being, I'll consider the debt paid." Madison looked at the contract, then at Miguel's implacable face. "And if I refuse? Then I walk out that door and you never see your father again. The cartel will make an example of him. Your mother will be next. And you'll spend whatever's left of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering when they'll come for you too." "You're a monster," Madison whispered. "No," Miguel said quietly. I'm consequence. Something you've never faced before. He stood to leave. You have 1 hour to decide. Your father has less than 20. At the door, he paused. You know what the saddest part is? That soup you threw away? Someone bought it for Isabella with their last $5. A stranger who had almost nothing gave everything to feed a hungry child, and you threw it away for likes. After he left, Madison sat in her ransacked apartment, surrounded by the ruins of her influencer empire. Her followers were gone. Her friends had abandoned her. Her family's wealth was seized. Her father was being tortured by cartel members, all because she'd been cruel to a child. She picked up the contract Miguel had left. 5 years of actual work. 5 years of helping people she'd previously considered beneath her. 5 years of using whatever voice she had left to advocate for the homeless, or watch her family die. Madison Brooks, who'd never made a real choice in her privileged life, finally understood what it meant to have no good options. She signed the contract. The Salvation Army homeless shelter on South State Street smelled like industrial disinfectant mixed with despair. Madison stood in the serving line at 5 a.m., her designer clothes replaced with a stained volunteer apron, her manicured nails now chipped from washing endless dishes. It had been 2 weeks since she'd signed Miguel's contract. "Brooks, more potatoes!" barked Sandra, the shelter supervisor who took particular pleasure in ordering around the fallen influencer. Madison hefted another steaming tray of instant mashed potatoes to the serving station. Her back ached, her feet hurt, and she hadn't slept properly since her father's release. The cartel had let him go, as Miguel promised, but not before taking 3 fingers as a reminder about the cost of unwanted attention. The shelter residents had recognized her immediately, of course. The girl who'd thrown away food while children starved. Some spat at her feet. Others just stared with hollow eyes that made her want to disappear. "Smile when you serve," Sandra commanded. "These people deserve respect." Madison forced her face into something resembling pleasant as the breakfast line formed. Hundreds of Chicago's homeless, each with their own story, their own tragedy, their own hunger. Then she saw them. Isabella stood in line with Miguel, her small hand in his, wearing a clean but obviously second-hand winter coat. The little girl's eyes widened when she saw Madison behind the serving counter. "Tio, it's her," Isabella whispered, though Madison could hear her clearly. "I know, mija. It's okay." They moved through the line slowly, inevitably approaching Madison's station. When they finally stood before her, Madison's hand shook as she held the serving spoon. "Would you like some potatoes?" she managed to ask. Isabella looked up at her uncle, who nodded. "Yes, please," the little girl said quietly. Madison served them, her eyes burning with unshed tears. The child she'd traumatized for entertainment was standing right there, politely accepting food from her tormentor. "Thank you," Isabella said, and those 2 words hit Madison harder than any insult could have. As they moved on, Madison heard Isabella ask, "Miguel, why is she working here?" "She's learning," Miguel replied simply. "Sometimes people need to fall all the way down before they can start climbing back up the right way." The rest of Madison's shift blurred together. Face after face of people she'd previously considered invisible. A veteran missing a leg, a teenager who'd aged out of foster care, a woman with 3 kids fleeing domestic violence, each with hunger in their eyes and gratitude for a hot meal, no matter how basic. When her shift ended at 2 p.m., Madison found Miguel waiting outside. "Walk with me," he said. It wasn't a request. They walked through Chicago's streets, Madison seeing them differently now. Every doorway potentially someone's bedroom, every trash can potentially someone's next meal. Your father's recovering, Miguel said finally. The cartel won't bother him again as long as you keep our agreement. Thank you, Madison said, meaning it. Don't thank me. Thank Isabella. She's the one who asked me not to let them kill him. Madison stopped walking. She did? My niece has more compassion in her tiny finger than you've had in your entire life. Even after what you did, she didn't want your family to suffer. I don't understand her. Or you. If someone had hurt my family, you'd what? Make a mean TikTok about them? Miguel's laugh was bitter. You've never had to protect anyone, Madison. Never had to sacrifice. Never had to choose between your comfort and someone else's survival. They stopped at a small park where a group of homeless individuals had set up camp. Miguel pulled out sandwiches from his bag, distributing them to people who clearly knew and trusted him. 3 years ago, he said, watching Madison's reaction, I was someone very different. Someone dangerous. Someone who solved problems with violence. What changed? My sister died. Car accident. Left behind Isabella. Suddenly, I had this little girl who needed protection, but not the kind I was used to providing. She needed safety, stability, love. So I burned my old life and became invisible. But you're not invisible. The FBI, the cartel, the way you destroyed me, that took power. Miguel turned to her then, and for a moment, she saw El Fantasma, the ghost that criminals feared. I still have power, Madison. I just choose not to use it unless someone forces my hand. You forced my hand. I'm sorry, Madison said, and for perhaps the first time in her life, meant it. Sorry isn't enough. Sorry doesn't fill Isabella's stomach when she's hungry. Sorry doesn't give back dignity to the people you've humiliated. He started walking again. But it's a start. That evening, Madison returned to her apartment, or what was left of it. The FBI had released it from evidence, but she couldn't afford the rent anymore. She had 30 days to vacate. Her phone, once constantly buzzing with notifications, was silent. No followers to engage, no brands to promote, no friends to party with. She opened her laptop and began typing. Not a video script or an Instagram caption, but something else. A blog post on a free platform, the only space where she could still have a voice. My name is Madison Brooks. You probably know me as the girl who threw away a homeless child's food. I want to tell you about the man who destroyed my life because of it, and why I deserved every second of it. She wrote about Miguel, carefully avoiding details that might identify him, but explaining how one man's determination to protect his niece had revealed the rot in her entire world. She wrote about her father's crimes, her own cruelty, the empire built on stepping on others. But most importantly, she wrote about Isabella, the 7-year-old girl who'd asked her uncle to show mercy to the people who'd hurt her. A child with nothing who had more grace than Madison had ever possessed. The post got 17 views in the first week. No viral sensation, no massive engagement. Just 17 people reading the confession of a fallen influencer. One of those readers was Alexandra Chen, the FBI agent. Chen appeared at the shelter during Madison's next shift. Interesting blog post, she said, pulling Madison aside. Are you here to arrest me again? No. I'm here because someone sent me a message, said you might be willing to provide information about your father's connections. Full cooperation in exchange for immunity. Madison's breath caught. Someone? Anonymous source. Very reliable. Has been feeding us information about trafficking networks for years. Says you might want to actually help for once in your life. It was Miguel, Madison realized. Still pulling strings, still offering her chances to redeem herself. What would you need from me? Everything. Every name your father mentioned. every suspicious transaction you witnessed, every party where you saw things you shouldn't have. It would be dangerous. The cartel has a long memory. Madison thought about Isabella, about the grace of a hungry child, about Miguel's words regarding protection and sacrifice. "I'll do it," she said. Chen studied her. "Why? What's changed?" Madison looked around the shelter, at the people she'd once considered worthless, at the life she'd been forced to confront. "I learned what it's like to have nothing. And I learned that someone who has nothing can still choose to be kind. I want to choose differently now." Over the next 3 months, Madison became the FBI's most valuable asset in dismantling the money laundering network her father had helped build. She wore wires to meetings with former family friends, provided passwords to offshore accounts, identified connections between legitimate businesses and cartel operations. Every morning, she worked at the shelter. Every afternoon, she met with federal agents. Every evening, she wrote blog posts that nobody read about the reality of homelessness in Chicago. Miguel watched it all from the shadows, monitoring her progress through his networks. She was changing, slowly and painfully, like a broken bone resetting itself. Isabella sometimes came to the shelter for meals, always polite to Madison, always distant, until one day, 3 months into Madison's service, when the little girl approached her during a quiet moment. "My uncle says you're helping catch bad people now," Isabella said in her small voice. "I'm trying," Madison replied, kneeling to Isabella's eye level. "Why?" Madison thought about lying, about giving some noble answer, but Isabella deserved truth. "Because I was one of the bad people, and someone showed me I could choose to be different." Isabella studied her with those deep brown eyes that had seen too much for a 7-year-old. "My mama used to say everyone deserves a second chance." "Your mama sounds like she was very wise." "She was." Isabella pulled something from her pocket, a friendship bracelet made of colorful string, clearly handmade. "I made this in the shelter's art class. You can have it if you want." Madison's vision blurred with tears as she accepted the simple gift. It was worth more than all the designer jewelry she'd ever owned, because it represented something she'd never had before. Forgiveness freely given. "Thank you," she whispered. Isabella smiled, the first real smile she'd ever given Madison, and skipped back to Miguel. That night, Madison's blog post was different. Instead of confession, she wrote about grace. About a little girl who'd taught her more about humanity than 23 years of privilege ever had. About the power of choosing kindness even when the world had given you every reason to choose cruelty. This time, the post got 57 views. Progress. But Miguel wasn't finished with her education. The real test was yet to come. Madison was wiping down tables at the shelter when her replacement phone, a cheap burner the FBI had given her, buzzed with an encrypted message. "They know." 2 words that made her blood freeze. She looked around the shelter's main room, suddenly seeing threats in every shadow. Someone knew she was cooperating with the FBI. Someone who wouldn't hesitate to kill her for it. That night, she found Miguel waiting in her almost empty apartment. He stood by the window, watching the street below with professional intensity. "The Morelos cartel knows you're the informant," he said without preamble. "They've put a price on your head, $50,000. Madison's knees gave out. She collapsed onto her one remaining chair, a thrift store find that squeaked under her weight. "How long do I have?" "Maybe 72 hours before they send someone. Less if you're unlucky." "The FBI said they'd protect me." "The FBI will put you in witness protection after the trial. That's 8 months away. You won't last 8 days without help." Madison understood what he wasn't saying. The girl who'd thrown away a child's food was about to be thrown away herself, discarded by a system that had used her and would now abandon her. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. Miguel finally turned from the window. "Because Isabella asked me to. She's worried about you. A 7-year-old child who you traumatized is worried about your safety. Think about that. What do I do? You have 2 choices. Run now. Try to disappear on your own with no money, no resources, no skills. You'll be dead within a week." He paused. "Or you accept my protection." "Why would you protect me?" "I wouldn't. But Isabella sees something in you worth saving. She says you're different now, that you're trying." His expression hardened. "I think she's wrong, but I've never been able to deny her anything." Madison's phone buzzed. "Agent Chen, we need to meet. Urgent." "Go," Miguel said. "Meet your handler. But understand that after tonight the FBI can't help you. Only I can." The meeting location was a parking garage in the Loop, the kind of place where conversations couldn't be recorded. Chen was already there, leaning against an unmarked sedan, her face grim. "We have a problem," Chen said. "Your intelligence led to a raid this morning. We seized 80 million in drugs and arrested 17 cartel members. But someone leaked that you were the source." "Miguel already told me. There's a price on my head." Chen's expression darkened. "Your mysterious guardian angel? Madison, do you have any idea who's really protecting you? A man who loves his niece. He's El Fantasma, the ghost. One of the most prolific contract killers in modern history. 37 confirmed kills across 3 continents, probably twice that unconfirmed. He's wanted by law enforcement in 12 countries." Madison felt the world tilt. She'd known Miguel was dangerous, but this... "He retired 3 years ago," Chen continued. "Disappeared completely. Every agency in the world has been looking for him. And he's been hiding in plain sight as a homeless man in Chicago. Are you going to arrest him?" Chen laughed bitterly. "With what evidence? He doesn't exist on paper. No fingerprints in any database, no DNA, no real name we can verify. Besides," she looked at Madison meaningfully, "he's the only reason you're still alive. He's the one who's been feeding us intelligence for years. Half our biggest cases came from anonymous tips that we now know came from him. So what do I do? Officially? Enter witness protection immediately. Unofficially?" Chen handed her a card with nothing but a phone number. "If Miguel Hernandez or whatever his real name is offers you protection, take it. He's kept his niece safe for 3 years in conditions that would break most people. He can keep you alive until trial." That night, Madison sat in her empty apartment waiting for death or salvation, unsure which would come first. At 3 a.m. she got her answer. The door exploded inward, kicked off its hinges by 2 men in ski masks. Madison screamed, rolling behind the kitchen counter as bullets shattered the windows. This was it. She was going to die in a shitty apartment, unmourned and forgotten. Then the lights went out. In the darkness, Madison heard sounds that would haunt her forever. The wet thud of bodies hitting flesh, the crack of bones breaking. Muffled screams cut short. It lasted maybe 30 seconds, but felt like hours. When the lights came back on, Miguel stood in her destroyed doorway, not even breathing hard. The 2 assassins lay unconscious on her floor, their weapons disassembled and scattered. "We're leaving," he said simply. "Now." Madison grabbed the few possessions she had left, Isabella's friendship bracelet, her FBI burner phone, and ironically, a can of soup she'd bought to remind herself of her crime. They stepped over the unconscious killers and into the hallway. "Aren't you going to kill them?" she asked, shocked. "I don't kill anymore. Isabella wouldn't approve." He guided her to the stairwell. but they'll wake up with every bone in their hands broken. Hard to be a Sicario when you can't hold a gun. They emerged into a Chicago dawn that felt alien and threatening. Every person could be a killer. Every car could carry death. Miguel moved her through the city with practiced efficiency, using routes that avoided cameras and witnesses. They ended up at another safe house, this one beneath a closed restaurant in Chinatown. As Miguel secured the entrance, Madison finally asked the question that had been burning in her mind. Agent Chen says you're El Fantasma, that you've killed 37 people. 43, Miguel corrected casually. Chen's numbers are old. How can Isabella love someone who's killed 43 people? Miguel turned to her, his expression unreadable. Because to her, I'm just Tio Miguel who tells her stories and makes sure she's never hungry. Children don't see the past. They see the present. Isabella sees who I am now, not who I was. And who are you now? A man trying to raise a good child in a bad world. He pulled out a laptop and began typing rapidly. The Morelos cartel has 12 active sicarios in Chicago. By tomorrow, they'll all be looking for you. So I'm dead. No, you're bait. Madison's blood chilled. What? The cartel has been a cancer in this city for 20 years. The FBI chips away at them, but they always rebuild. But now, they're about to make a fatal mistake. They're going to come after someone under my protection, and I'm going to end them. You said you don't kill anymore. I don't. But there are worse things than death for men who live by fear and reputation. Over the next 48 hours, Miguel orchestrated something that law enforcement would later call impossible: the complete dismantling of a cartel operation without firing a single shot or killing a single person. Using Madison as bait, he drew out the sicarios one by one. Each thought they were hunting easy prey. Each discovered too late that they were the ones being hunted. The first sicario woke up in his car, hands zip-tied to the steering wheel, with every piece of evidence about his crimes gift-wrapped on the dashboard and a call already placed to 911. The second found himself locked in a shipping container, with a laptop live-streaming his confession to YouTube before the FBI arrived. The third through seventh were discovered by police in various states of incapacitation, each with comprehensive evidence of their crimes and connections. But it was the eighth sicario that broke the cartel's spine. Eduardo Morelos, Joaquin's nephew and heir apparent, personally came to Chicago to handle Madison himself. He brought 4 of his best men to the address where Miguel had deliberately leaked Madison would be hiding. They entered the warehouse, ready for war. They found something else entirely. Miguel stood alone in the center of the empty space, no weapons visible, completely calm. Eduardo, your uncle and I once worked together. Out of respect for that history, I'm giving you one chance to walk away. Eduardo laughed, pulling his gold-plated pistol. You're old, Ghost, past your prime, and you don't even have a gun. I don't need one. What happened next was captured on security cameras that Miguel had deliberately left running. 23 seconds of violence so precise, so brutal, and so complete that hardened criminals would later watch it and decide to change careers. Eduardo and his 4 men were left alive but destroyed, bones shattered, tendons severed with surgical precision, damaged in ways that would leave them crippled but breathing. The message was clear. El Fantasma could kill you whenever he wanted. If you were alive, it was because he chose mercy. But the real masterstroke came next. Miguel had recorded everything, every confession, every crime, every connection between the Morelos cartel and corrupt officials in Chicago. He sent it simultaneously to the FBI, DEA, ATF, Chicago PD Internal Affairs, and every major news outlet in the country. In one night, the Morelos cartel lost everything. Their sicarios were arrested or hospitalized, their connections exposed, their protection evaporated. Joaquin Morelos himself was arrested at his estate, brought down by evidence that mysteriously appeared in his own safe. Madison watched it all from the safe house, unable to comprehend the strategic genius of what Miguel had accomplished. He'd used her as bait to draw out and destroy an entire criminal organization while technically keeping his promise to Isabella. He hadn't killed anyone. Why? She finally asked. Why go to all this trouble for me? Miguel was quiet for a long moment, then pulled out his phone and showed her a video. It was Isabella, recorded without her knowledge, playing with the few toys they had in their latest shelter. She was acting out a scene with 2 dolls. This one is the mean lady, Isabella said in her innocent voice, making one doll push the other. But then she learned to be nice. She helps people now. Everyone deserves to be better, right, Mama? She looked up at the sky, talking to her deceased mother. You said everyone can change if someone believes in them. Miguel put the phone away. That's why. Because a 7-year-old orphan who sleeps in shelters still believes people can change. Because despite everything the world has done to her, Isabella still chooses kindness. I keep you alive because my niece's faith in humanity is the only pure thing left in my life, and I won't let the world destroy that. Madison felt tears streaming down her face. This child, this beautiful, broken, hopeful child, had saved her life simply by believing she was worth saving. I don't deserve her forgiveness, Madison whispered. No, Miguel agreed, but you have it anyway. That's what makes it grace. 8 months later, Madison Brooks sat in a federal courthouse in downtown Chicago, preparing to testify against what remained of the Morelos cartel. She looked nothing like the influencer who'd thrown away a child's food. Her designer clothes were replaced with a simple gray suit from Goodwill. Her perfect makeup was gone, revealing a face that had aged years in months. Her hands, once manicured weekly, now bore the calluses of real work. The prosecution calls Madison Brooks to the stand. As she walked to the witness box, Madison caught sight of 2 figures in the gallery. Miguel and Isabella sat in the back row, the little girl now 8 years old, wearing a new dress that Miguel had bought for the occasion. Isabella gave her a small wave of encouragement. For 6 hours, Madison testified. She detailed every crime she'd witnessed, every connection her father had facilitated, every dollar that had been laundered through legitimate businesses. She held nothing back, even when it implicated people who had been family friends, even when it exposed her own complicity in ignoring obvious crimes. The defense attorney, a shark in a $5,000 suit, tried to destroy her credibility. Ms. Brooks, isn't it true that you're only testifying to save yourself from prosecution? No, Madison said clearly. I'm testifying because Isabella Hernandez taught me that doing the right thing matters more than protecting yourself. Isabella Hernandez? The homeless child from your viral video? The child whose food I threw away? Yes. She showed me more grace than I deserved, and I'm trying to be worthy of it. The attorney pressed harder. You've lost everything, haven't you? Your money, your fame, your family's reputation. This is just revenge, isn't it? Madison looked directly at the cartel members in the defendant's box, then at Miguel and Isabella. I lost everything I thought mattered, but I gained something I never had before, the ability to look at myself in the mirror without disgust. That's worth more than all the followers in the world. Her testimony led to 17 convictions. The Morelos cartel's Chicago operation was destroyed completely. Agent Chen would later call it the most successful RICO prosecution in Illinois history. After the trial, Madison found Miguel and Isabella waiting outside the courthouse. "You did well," Miguel said simply. The truth needed to be told. Isabella tugged on Madison's sleeve. When Madison knelt down, the little girl hugged her, the first time she'd ever done so. "I'm proud of you," Isabella whispered. Those 4 words broke something in Madison that had been frozen since childhood. She sobbed, holding this little girl who'd saved her soul, while Miguel stood guard over both of them. When Madison finally composed herself, Miguel handed her an envelope. "What's this?" "A job offer. There's a new shelter opening on the south side. They need a programs coordinator. Someone who understands both worlds, the one with money and the one without. The director thinks you'd be perfect. But I'm about to enter witness protection. I have to disappear." "No, you don't." Miguel smiled slightly. "The Morelos cartel is finished. The other cartels won't touch you. Word has spread about what happens to those who threaten anyone under my protection. You're safe. Because of you. You saved me." "No," Miguel corrected. "Isabella saved you the moment she forgave you. I just handled the logistics." Madison looked at the job offer. It was barely above minimum wage, included no fame, no glamour, nothing she'd once valued. It was perfect. "I'll take it." 2 years passed. Madison Brooks, former influencer, woke up at 5 a.m. in her studio apartment, a different one, earned with honest work. The walls were decorated not with designer bags, but with drawings from shelter kids, including several from Isabella. She arrived at the South Side shelter at 6 a.m., preparing for another day of serving those society had forgotten. But today was special. Today, they were launching a new program she'd developed, teaching social media literacy to homeless youth, showing them how to tell their stories without being exploited. "Morning, Madison," called James, a veteran she'd helped get into permanent housing. "Big day." "Morning, James. You ready for your interview?" James was going to be featured in their first video, not as a nameless homeless person for others to gawk at, but as a human being with a story worth hearing. Madison had learned the power of social media could be used to humanize, not humiliate. At lunch, Miguel and Isabella arrived with sandwiches from Isabella's favorite deli. The little girl, now 9, was thriving in school, still living with Miguel but no longer on the streets. Miguel had gradually emerged from hiding, using his skills to work as a security consultant for victims of cartel violence. "Madison!" Isabella ran to her, showing off a report card full of A's. "Look! My teacher says I'm reading at a 6th grade level." "That's amazing, sweetheart." As they ate lunch in the shelter's small courtyard, Madison reflected on the strange journey that had brought them here. She'd gone from having millions of followers to having about 30 people who actually cared about her. She'd traded fake friends for real purpose. She'd exchanged digital hearts for actual love. Her phone, now used only for work, buzzed with a notification. Someone had tagged her in a post. Madison rarely looked at social media anymore, but the username caught her attention. Isabella, Hope Project. It was a new account Isabella had created with Miguel's permission. The first post was a picture of the 3 of them at the shelter, with a caption written in Isabella's improving English. 2 years ago, someone threw away my food and filmed it. Today, she feeds hundreds of people every day. My Tio says revenge is empty, but redemption fills everyone. Madison Brooks taught me that the worst person on their worst day can become good if someone believes in them. I believed. Now she believes too. Second chances. Redemption is possible. The post would never go viral like Madison's cruel video had. It would get maybe 1,000 views, mostly from people connected to the shelter. But every view would be from someone who understood that change was possible, that grace was real, that a homeless child's forgiveness could save a soul. That evening, after the shelter closed, Madison stood outside watching the Chicago sunset paint the sky purple and gold. Miguel appeared beside her as he often did, moving with that silent grace that reminded her he'd always be dangerous, just choosing not to be. "Any regrets?" he asked. Madison thought about her old life, the penthouse, the designer clothes, the millions of followers, the empty validation. Then she thought about James getting housing, Isabella's hugs, the teenagers she'd taught to use social media responsibly, the hundreds of meals she'd served. "Only one," she said. Miguel raised an eyebrow. "I wish I'd learned earlier that the only influence worth having is the kind that lifts others up." "Isabella taught you that." "Isabella taught me